Hello CoinOpTV viewers, this is James, and I am here today with a preview for Reservoir Dogs Bloody Days, out now on the PC Steam platform. And of course, the title alone raises questions about quality and whether it does the license justice or not. And the short, non-nuanced answer is no. It does not do the license justice, but then again, I don't think there's any game that could. And that of course is because Reservoir Dogs, the movie, is a heist movie where you never actually see the heist. All you ever see is the aftermath and the build up to it, but most of the action is off screen. And in a video game, you can't really do that because the whole point is the action. And in addition to that, a large part of the movie is dedicated to the fact that we don't have any background for these characters, and in fact, we don't want background for these characters. That would be entirely against the point. So that leaves us here with Reservoir Dogs Bloody Days, which is kind of a prequel to the movie, in that there is a Mr. Blonde, a Mr. Blue, Pink, etc., but they're not the ones from the movie. They're just people who are inhabiting that name for this particular job, or in this case, sets of jobs. So if your only interest in this title was based on the license itself, you can safely go ahead and ignore this game. Its connection to the license is minimal and restricted almost entirely to the names of the characters, although there is this weird thing where even though they're not the characters from the movies, they share the personality traits with them, which is kind of a having their cake and eating it too kind of scenario. So if you take the license away from it, how is it as a game? And the answer to that is it's actually a pretty decent game. Not a great game, not a bad game, it's a decent game. And it's all hooked around this single mechanic where you basically play the game in co-op by yourself. And if that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, I'll do my best to explain, even though it's kind of a hard concept to wrap your head around. So the core gameplay in this is that it's a top-down shooter where you control multiple characters. You control them one at a time. However, their actions occur simultaneously, but it's not turn-based, it's real-time. So you'll play with your first character and you'll establish what actions they're going to do. And when you're done with that turn, you can click it off with the spacebar, or if the character dies, it'll end automatically. Now the switch here is you'll go to the second character, the first character will be reset, and he'll mimic the actions that you did with him. And the second character will actually have a chance to impact how those actions go through. So you might be able to kill a guard that was originally shooting the first character, or it can even be adverse in that you move too far forward, trigger an event that the other character didn't know about, and now all of a sudden he's got more guards to deal with. The problem with this is that the first character's actions will not change based on this new timeline of events. So if you kill a guard that he was already going to kill, he'll still fire the bullets just off into the air at nothing, and if you trigger guards that he didn't know about, they could potentially kill him without having him being able to react. On paper, it's a very interesting idea. The execution isn't quite there, though. It's not bad, and once you train your mind to deal with it, it's actually a lot of fun, because there's a very different sort of tactical reasoning you have to use with this style of gameplay, but it's also very frustrating. There were times in this game when I felt like an absolute badass, as I would take control of 4 or 5 or even 6 of the dogs, and we would just rip through whatever heist we were going through with no problem. And then there were other times when it felt like every time I turned a corner, somebody was dying. Now, to be fair, more often than not, when one of my characters died, it was definitely something I could trace back to myself making a mistake, rather than the game being cheap and throwing in things that you couldn't possibly have prepared for. But there is definitely a trial and error aspect to this game, because a lot of these situations will end up with things just coming out of left field. You'll have a chance to react to them. There's no like instant kill situation where you step on a trap and everybody dies or whatever. But you will definitely have a second or third run through of these levels, and it will go much more smoothly. And the game does encourage that, because you get rated after each level based on your performance, how often were you hit, how many times did you have to restart, how many characters died, etc. And it's rated on an A to F scale, with the first run through normally coming in at like a C or D rating, and then you'll have to work your way up as you become more familiar with the levels. So when you combine redoing these levels with the number of levels available, plus having to recruit several of the dogs who you won't start with at the beginning of the game, there's actually quite a bit of content here. But on the other hand, very early in the game, you will have seen all the mission types that you will see throughout the entire game, and it can definitely get repetitive. Now, they do a good job of mixing it up so that each mission features various different little sub-missions. Like, one part of a mission will be to rob the actual bank and collect as much money from it as possible. Another one will be to survive against waves of cops coming at you. Another one might be to track down a bank teller who's running from you and you only have 45 seconds to deal with it, that kind of thing. But after a while, it does start to feel samey. Because of that, and because of the relatively short mission length, I think most of them took between 10 and 20 minutes, with some of the later levels going a bit longer. This does end up being a fairly good game for just playing a couple of missions real fast and then turning it off for a while. I couldn't see myself binging through this entire game, but definitely loading it up every once in a while, playing through, and then just stopping for another couple days or weeks or months, which might be detrimental because you do need to be in a very specific mindset for this gameplay. In terms of technical performance, I had no problems running this game at 60 frames per second on high settings on a decently powerful computer. My laptop, which has a much older graphics card, was able to run it at medium settings at a reasonable frame rate. That said, the options menu for the video controls is extremely basic, with only the ability to choose low, medium, and high settings, and I think about 7 or 8 resolutions that you can pick from. If and when this gets a console release, I fully expect it will run just fine on both the Xbox One and PlayStation 4. So ultimately, Reservoir Dogs Bloody Days is not a bad game. It's not a great game. It's a perfectly fine game. It's good for wasting an hour or two here and there, just having fun with it. It is not a Reservoir Dogs game, though. Honestly, I don't think anyone outside of a Telltale Styles game could possibly make a good Reservoir Dogs game, but that's a whole different matter. So I think it was a bit of a ballsy move by them to use the Reservoir Dogs license. Obviously, it drew more attention to their game than they would have gotten if they had just released it as something called Bloody Days or something like that. But it might not always be the best kind of attention. But then again, there might also be no such thing as bad publicity. So we'll see how it does in the market. So the bottom line here is, I think that at $15, this is an okay game. If it goes on sale in the Steam Summer Sale or Winter Sale or on Humble Bundle or something like that, it's definitely worth picking up at $5, $7, $8, give or take. But there's certainly no rush to play this, regardless of whether or not you're here for the Reservoir Dogs license. I personally wouldn't hold the license against it because I understand why they did it, but definitely don't buy it for the license. Either way, thank you guys for watching. If you found this useful, please hit the like and subscribe button, and check back for more CoinOpTV videos here in the near future.